And the Chiquis was specifically designed to be Osceola Lodge, or as I like to call Osceola Lodge, the Lodge. Okay? Nah, I just like to call it the Lodge, right? And then that makes everybody else jealous. So, oh, I'm a tip saw. Yeah, I'm in the Lodge. I know it's a little snubby, but I think it's fun. So that, and I will truthfully tell you, the reason why we went with the Chiquis was because of Tippecanoe Lodge. They had a red teepee, we had a blue Chiquis. Okay, that's where it came from. All right. So the next thing was the little fire. Now, the design of this comes from the seal of the Seminole tribe. If you look at the Seminole tribe of Florida flag, it is 4 color bars: white, red, black, and yellow. In the middle of it is a symbol very similar to this, only without these extra symbols, the extra circles around it. It has a Chiquis with a fire, just like this, and on the bottom of it, it says, "In God We Trust." And that's the Seminole tribe of Florida, and it says Seminole tribe of Florida, Incorporated. So that was another influence on this design. Anybody wear high-top Converse? Anybody here? You wearing them tonight? No. Okay. You know, on a pair of high-top Converse Chuck Taylors? Okay. You know, on the inside of there's that star. Okay. That was an influence on this, right? Because it's a red and blue design, and a lot of the guys in the lodge at that particular time, we wore high-top Converse. We wore them so much, we actually came up with a Converse patch. So that patch was specifically designed to be sewn onto high-top Chuck Taylors. And a lot of the guys did that, or they super glued it, one of the two. All right, so get back to the orb design. So the white circle on the outside, all the way around, that represents the ordeal. You know, when you took your ordeal, you got the white bead on the red string? That's what that is. The brotherhood, which is leading to the middle, what happens when you take your brotherhood? You are symbolically bound, right? And the color is red, right? So that's the next one. That's the circle with the paths coming into the middle, right? And then the vigil is, of course, the most inner circle. So there's 3 circles in there. And that's what that whole patch, that whole design together is, and that's why that became kind of the lodge logo. Not the totem, because the totem is the War Chief Osceola. Okay? Now, everybody, who knows who Osceola was? The guy that the lodge is named after. Okay, who was Osceola that the lodge was named after?
He was,
what was his first name?
I'm not on a first name basis, but most that people.
Well, you should know who he is.
Corey.
Mac, what was Osceola's first name? Corey Osceola. Not Chief Osceola. Not Osceola from FSU, rides on the horse, throws the spear. Yay! This thing, right? No, he was named after Corey Osceola. The founders of Osceola Lodge were on a first name basis with what they called the Osceola family. If you talk to old-time members of Osceola Lodge, they call it Osceola. You talk to Ralph Hauser, he calls it Osceola Lodge. Osceola was the guy, Corey Osceola and Ralph Hauser, they knew each other. My wife went to middle school with his grandson, O.B. Osceola Jr. So there was a definite connection in the community with the Osceola family. As a matter of fact, last weekend I bought 2 Seminole jackets and some patchwork from Tina Osceola. So we still have a connection in that family. So that's where the name Osceola, as we call it now, came from. It wasn't the war chief. They chose the war chief as the totem, but that's not who the lodge is named after. Okay? And I believe he was, and at that time the family lived in Fort Myers, and then now they live mostly in Naples. And Golden Gate, as a matter of fact, if I remember. Okay, so I kind of got off on a tangent there, so I'm sorry. Okay, this flap here has got an interesting story to it. This one here, all these in here. Because they were designed in 1978 to go with a neckerchief that was made. The second neckerchief the lodge ever had. That flap was designed to go with it. And it was designed by Rick Obermeyer, again from Tippecanoe Lodge. And he had also designed the neckerchief. And it kind of sat, and it was approved by the LEC in 1976 or 78. It was approved, it was supposed to be made. And you know what came out? This one. The orange, the yellow and green one. That's what came out. Now this one came out. So again, we don't know who did it, but they certainly don't look like each other. So I had the design, the color schematics. I passed it on. I think it was either Gary or Dennis Mauser or somebody had passed it on, and then the lodge went ahead and made it. They used it for the jamboree and a couple other things too, if I remember right. Of course, we had this one was drawn, was that?
Camp Flying Eagle.
It was Rick, right?
Yeah.
Rick Langford designed that one up to celebrate the anniversary of Camp Flying Eagle. And so that was kind of a neat one to go in the middle of it. I've always got a kick out of the Beatles. The Walking Beatles design has been interesting.
Do you know where that came from?
I don't.
That came from our chapter.
Oh, it is? Okay.
Yeah. And it looked a lot better, but that's all.
Well, that's
Gary sent it off and they kept refusing it because it looked like the
too much like the Beatles.
No. It was Abbey Road.
Yeah.
It actually had Abbey Road in the original design.
They kept sending it back, refusing everything.
National rejected the original design twice on it.
Because of the road.
Because of the road and the stripes and all that.
Yeah.
They said, well, it looks like Abbey Road. I said, no kidding.
That's what we were going for.
That's what we're going for.
We went back to having Osceola front and center, kind of the Catholic version with the body. And then went back and then incorporated patchwork again and adding the orb center for the jamboree. Then you had your NOAC flaps with the sport. Yeah. And so that's kind of, wait, there's a couple more flaps.
Way down there.
And right there.
So here's the Spartan also on this one. And then I remember when Gary told me about the Osceola flap, about that particular year incorporating the flap into all the patches for the year patch, which I thought was kind of a clever idea. Yeah. Oh, I'm showing this.
I know what they can see.
Okay.
Here, I'll hold it.
There we go. So that was kind of neat, having the Osceola ghosted into the patch. And then for the anniversary of this last year, with the lodge doing two different flaps. This flap, of course, incorporates all three lodge totems from the three lodges that have been in Southwest Florida all these years. So you had the original lodge, which was Calusa, right? The second lodge, which was Kelly-Conan, and then the third lodge, when they split Kelly-Conan, and then for a little while, you had a Kelly-Conan lodge and Osceola lodge the same, and now it's all together once again. And this one, this design here was one that, and Bill, that was you and
Mac
Mac.
Aldridge.
Mac.
Yes.
Mac. There we go. And it's got the Centennial design there in the middle. This one in particular was taken there's a new painting that hangs in the State House in Tallahassee. And there's a picture of Osceola is standing there just like that, but his arm is extended this way and he's pointing to a ship. Now, when you see the painting, it's like, is he saying, go get on that boat, you don't live here? Or is he saying there's a boat, because obviously the Europeans came to Florida, but it's a neat painting, you can look it up and see it. That's where that design came from. And I lifted it, but then kind of muted out the colors a little bit. And that's where that new design comes. And of course, we put the Centennial logo on that. A couple other special flops besides the Spartan. When the lodge hosted its first section conference, we finally put Corey Osceola on the patch. So that's this one here. Now, an interesting story about Corey Osceola. He was really not a chief, okay? He was just an important member of the tribe. He had a lot of relations with American society. Let's just call it that. He had lost his arm very early in his childhood. So if you ever see a patch or a picture of him, you'll see that his Seminole jacket is pinned, and it kind of looks like it's behind him. And when you see the neckerchief for the section conference that year, he's got both arms, and he's shaking around. But we put Corey Osceola in the patch. The Chickees really didn't have any specific reasoning behind them. So when I drew out that patch, didn't specifically have a reason. On the neckerchief, there are enough Chickees for every lodge that was in the section at that particular point. And there's also, if you look at it real detail on that neckerchief patch, you'll see there's some Indians dancing, and there's one dancer for every lodge. And they're holding hands doing a friendship dance around a fire. So that's those patches. And then there was another NOAC. Oh, here's the other section conference patch. When the lodge hosted. See how I keep saying the lodge? Catching on you. This was, I believe, a Mike Brown design, if I remember correctly. Yeah. And this is the famous part, you know your Florida history, where there was a treaty that was laid out, and Osceola said, "This is how I will sign the treaty," and stuck his knife in that treaty, and that's a big fable. Is really what that is. That never happened. They've even examined the original treaty, and there happens to be what could be a cut, but most likely is when it got folded after all those years. So most likely never really happened, but it's a great story. So that's where that design comes from, and Mike then incorporated some Seminole patchwork. At one point, you could come to a lodge weekend, and a third of everybody sitting in the dining hall would be wearing Seminole jackets. When I was a kid, that was kind of a rite of passage. You would get a Seminole jacket when you got Vigil. That's when I got mine. When you got Eagle, if you became a lodge officer. Don Craig was kind of famous that he would give the lodge chief a Seminole jacket, and then he'd go around and he'd go, "Hey, John, can I have a couple bucks for that?" "All right, can I have some money for that?" So that was kind of a fun thing that Don would. But the cool thing was that almost every lodge chief ended up with a Seminole jacket. Yeah, get it.
One of the NOACs, we took 20-some members, and every one of us had a Seminole jacket. And we also visited, at that time, we stopped in Nashville, Tennessee, went to the Hermitage, Andrew Jackson, and
Right, yeah.
We all wore our Seminole jackets to the Hermitage.
And y'all know who
You get the irony of that?
You know who Andrew Jackson was?
If you know your history,
One that
it's
shipped
still
it off to Oklahoma? Yeah. Let's see. Or what? Okay. And then this set here, lastly. You guys know what to know at. You know the flamingo set. When I drew up that lodge flap, I was 18 years old. And we did it as a joke for the National Leadership Seminars. We were in Whoa Hey Lodge, and that's why on the patch he says Whoa Hey, so I threw that in there. But we called it Whoa Hey Lodge 7-Eleven. Okay, you got it. So that was it. It was exactly like that, except it didn't have the orb, the Centennial logo in it. Instead, it just had the sun. And there was, these are actual people that I knew in my lifetime that were in my kind of my circle. So the tall guy with the blue mohawk was the best man at my wedding. The guy here with the sunglasses and the short crop, that's my brother. This guy here with the sunglasses down here, that is a former lodge chief of Osceola, Chris Ford. This is myself in the round glasses. I used to wear round glasses. And that's my wife, the lighter colored flamingo. That's our female flamingo. So I set that design down and to Deanna, and she had her daughter play with it a little bit, if I remember right, and sent me back an idea of adding the Seminole jackets. So that's what we did. We had the Seminole jackets. We put the lady in a skirt, right? So that was kind of cool, and we actually had a lady represented on the flap. And then we had Osceola sitting here in his beach chair, right? Saying, well, hey, right? And as you probably also noticed, we threw the Converse back onto the flamingos there. So that was what that design was. I don't know anything about this one.
Graham lost her. He did that. He did the whole set down there in the bottom in the next case. That all.
Okay.
Yeah, he did all those too.
Okay, cool. Okay, so let's go to some activity pads. I'm going to highlight the activity pads, so I'm not going to go through every one. This one right here from 1983, this is erroneously, people say that it's a copy of the NOAC patch from 83. It is not a copy of the NOAC patch. Actually had drawn it up before we went to NOAC. Now when we came back from NOAC and we saw what the patch looked like, then we made it kind of conform that. The reason why it's in Mylar is Osceola Lodge won the Ultimate Frisbee Championship at NOAC in '83. And so that's why we did the Mylar on there to kind of commemorate that particular thing. So that was Osceola Lodge's first activity patch. This one, again, erroneously has been credited to me as designing. I had nothing to do with it. It's a stock patch from a patch company. Way back when patch companies used to provide a stock patch, all you had to do was add lettering to it. The words on here that says deeds, not words, the lodge chief at that time was Max Furbringer. That was the slogan for his naval unit. It was deeds, not words. And so that's how that ended up on the patch. So I don't know, there was a design that was submitted. Again, it's kind of like this patch. It disappeared, and that showed up. Nobody, Max may have actually designed it. I'm not even 100% sure. The next patch. Now, I got to tell you something. When you put a person on a flap on a patch, you're really doing something. And that's why you don't normally see a whole lot of patches out there with actual regular lodge members. Every lodge produces some fantastic people. And so it's very hard to come up with a patch that specifically, is dedicated because, well, we're going to do it for this guy. And then we're going to, he was like the best cook ever. We need a hip patch for him. And you can really start to kind of make those patches. The reason why Van Heisey is on that patch, and that's what his name is, Van Heisey, V-A-N, that's his first name, and then H-I-S-E-Y. Some people think that's his last name is Van Heisey. But Van was a Vigil Honor member from Osceola,